Referendum 74 is a ballot measure in Washington state intended to overturn SB 6239, a law signed by Governor Chris Gregoire in February of 2012. Under SB 6239, all couples in Washington state may marry, regardless of relationship orientation, and no church nor church leader may be penalized if they do not perform such a marriage. No one may be denied the right of marriage and all its legal benefits and protections, and no one is forced to perform a marriage they don't want to. But some people do not agree with freedom for all Americans, especially gay couples. Referendum 74 is an attempt to overturn the legally enacted freedom of marriage for all Washington citizens, to specifically deny marriage rights to gay couples and only to gay couples. What are the reasons to overturn same-sex marriage rights? Let's look at the website for Preserve Marriage Washington, a site dedicated to denying equal rights under the law to gay couples wishing to marry. According to the Preserve Marriage Washington website, contrary to what some people think, same-sex marriage would not exist in the law alongside traditional marriage, as if it were a different expression of the same marriage institution they have always known. Marriage will be redefined for everyone. Our historic understanding of marriage as the union of one man and one woman would be replaced by a new paradigm for marriage as the union of two people, regardless of gender. This argument is blatantly false. Two men being married, two women being married, a man and woman being married. All three couples are legally married, and all marriages exist side by side with equal rights and protection for all three couples. Rights currently only available to male-female married couples. This new redefined version of marriage as a genderless institution would be the only legally recognized definition of marriage in Washington. Such a radical change in the definition of marriage will produce a host of societal conflicts that government, exercising its enormous enforcement powers, will have to resolve. Citizens, small businesses, and religious organizations whose own beliefs, traditions, morals, or ethnic upbringing are at odds with the new definition of marriage will find themselves subjected to legal consequences if they do not act according to the new legal orthodoxy. That paperwork will have to change so that marriage licenses do not just say bride and groom only is a given. But paperwork changes on a regular basis in all areas of government and business. School enrollment forms, insurance paperwork, hospital admissions forms, all change constantly, and America has not fallen into chaos despite these changes. And this statement is an outright lie. No one will be penalized for choosing not to marry couples if their faith traditions forbid it. Here is the extract from SB 6239. A regularly licensed or ordained minister or priest, imam, rabbi, or similar official of any religious organization shall be immune from any civil claim or cause of action based on a refusal to solemnize or recognize any marriage under this section. No religious organization is required to provide accommodations, facilities, advantages, privileges, services, or goods related to the solemnization or celebration of marriage. There are more citations, but it is very clear that the law recognizes same-sex marriages and all legal rights under marriage for same-sex couples without penalizing anyone for refusing to perform a same-sex wedding. Yet Preserve Marriage Washington continues to infer that if SB 6239 is not overturned, businesses and religious organizations refusing to perform same-sex marriages will be penalized. Here are their claims. Religious groups who have refused to make their facilities available for same-sex couples have lost their state tax exemption. Religious groups like Catholic Charities in Boston and Washington, D.C. have had to choose between fulfilling their social mission based on their religious beliefs or acquiescing to the new definition of marriage. They have, for example, been forced to close their charitable adoption agencies. Again, SB 6239 clearly spells out that this will not happen in Washington, as this extract shows. No state agency or local government may base a decision to penalize, withhold benefits from, or refuse to contract with any religious organization on the refusal of a person associated with such religious organization to solemnize or recognize a marriage under this section. And Preserve Marriage Washington goes on to shoot themselves in the foot big time. Look at this excerpt. Perhaps most importantly, SB 6239 shifting the focus of our marriage laws away from the interests of children and society as a whole, and onto the desires of the adults involved in same-sex relationships, will result in the most profound long-term consequences. Such a paradigm shift says to children that mothers and fathers don't matter, especially fathers. Any two parents will do. It proclaims the false notion that a man can be a mother and a woman can be a father, that men and women are exactly the same in rearing children, and it undermines the marriage culture by making marriage a meaningless political gesture rather than a child-affirming social construct. Here they're not even addressing same-sex marriage, they're attacking single mothers and fathers. Throughout world history, millions have been raised and raised very well by single mothers, single fathers, aunts, uncles, grandparents. The combination of parental figures is staggering. Yet Preserve Marriage Washington doesn't seem to realize that they are attacking the kinds of parents that have already raised some of the greatest figures in history. Like George Washington, America's first president, the namesake of the state from which Preserve Marriage Washington operates. After these lies, twisted truths, and complete divergence from their own point, Preserve Marriage Washington summarizes their viewpoint with a statement devoid of any fact or possible citation. When marriage ceases to have its historic meaning and understanding, over time fewer and fewer people will marry. We will have an inevitable increase in children born out of wedlock, an increase in fatherlessness, a resulting increase in female and child poverty, and a higher incidence of all the documented social ills associated with children being raised in a home without their married parents. As many people have pointed out, the history of marriage as a recognized social, religious, and legal institution is rife with permutations far removed from one man, one woman. In the Bible, women could be sold into marriage. Men could marry multiple women and have concubines. Soldiers could forcibly marry female prisoners of war, and men were required to marry their brother's widow to impregnate her to carry on the family name. None of these, though recognized by the Bible, are in practice today, yet no one mourns them as a loss to traditional marriage. Further, the summary is entirely speculative. There is no evidence to support the statement or its conclusions, nor is the summary a true summary. It is simply a platitude devoid of fact or research, failing to cite any previous statement on Preserve Marriage's website, yet intended to be taken as gospel by the reader. Let's be frank here. The statement that traditional marriage will be threatened by gay marriage is undermined by two ambiguities. The word threaten is never defined. Will gay marriage pull a knife? Will gay marriage bully? Will gay marriage take away straight marriage's lunch money? The word is never defined, and therefore is meaningless as an argument, as it cannot be backed up by empirical evidence or factual citation. Also, traditional is the word used, not straight, meaning man-woman marriage, but traditional, inferring that there is a definition of marriage that is inviolable, a definition that gay marriage does not fit into. This is also ambiguous. Marriage traditions go back thousands of years in hundreds of cultures, religions, and societies. Arranged marriages still exist in the world, an ancient tradition. Nuns are considered brides of Christ, a spiritual bond with similar vows to a traditional marriage. Polygamy is legal in 50 countries worldwide, though illegal in America for over 120 years, though the practice was sanctioned in the Bible. But despite the manifold traditional marriage types, none are threatened by gay marriage. None will cease to exist. None will be less binding, less holy, less sanctioned, any more than an interracial marriage, once illegal in America, ever threatened a same-race marriage of that time. Now let's hear from an expert, Jonathan Eggleston, Ph.D. Economics of the University of Virginia. Same-sex marriage has become an important political issue for the United States, with many states still in a heated debate over whether it should be legal. Some have argued that the legalization of gay marriage could increase divorce rates by undermining the sanctity of marriage. Using an empirical model from the literature on unilateral divorce laws, I find that legalizing same-sex marriage or civil unions in a state has no effect on the state's divorce or marriage rates. These results give preliminary evidence which suggests that the marriage and divorce decisions of heterosexual couples are not affected by whether or not same-sex couples are allowed to form legal unions. Here we have strong evidence that gay marriage poses no threat to straight marriage, not based on conjecture or supposition, but on research into divorce and marriage statistics. For what other threat to marriage is there than divorce? And if gay marriage isn't increasing the divorce rate, then there is no threat to anyone else's marriage from same-sex marriage. Period. No other basic right in America has been put to popular vote before. When Congress passed the 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote in 1920, no one raised money to put the act to a referendum so as to repeal that right. Voting, like speech, religion, fair trial, public assembly, petitioning the government, is a basic right to be enjoyed by all Americans. So in 1920, did men suddenly feel that their own voting rights were threatened by women voting? Did they feel that traditional voting was imperiled? No, and no one attempted to put women's voting rights on a ballot with money and negative advertising to defeat that basic freedom. And neither should same-sex marriage. Americans are Americans. In every occupation, at every level of public service, in every state and city, gay Americans are a part of the greatest country on earth. We will never know how many gays died for the cause of freedom and the basic rights meant to be enjoyed by all in this country. We will never know how many gays have served in public office, how many have been law enforcement officials, judges, doctors, teachers, clergy, explorers, firefighters, construction workers, writers, painters, philosophers. We will never truly know how much American and human history has benefited from our gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender citizens. And yet, knowing could never change their impact on our lives, on our history, on our freedom, and on humanity itself. Because we are all human to the core, and as humans, we all deserve human rights. Let us then vote for marriage equality in Washington, and resist all such attempts to put human rights to a vote. No one should rule anyone else's lives. No one should live without the rights that other Americans have. And a nation founded on freedom and equality cannot survive without guaranteeing these to all its citizens.